Let me tell you about a man named David, 53 when he came to see me, financially successful, professionally respected, married, 2 grown children, everything on the list. He'd gone into his father's business at 22 because that was simply what happened in his family. He never consciously chose it, and in 3 decades, across hundreds of major decisions, he had never once asked himself whether he wanted it. From the outside, David had arrived. From the inside, he was quietly asking the question that brings people to me. Is this all there is? If you've been drifting, feeling like a fraud, unable to commit to a decision, chasing achievements that never resolve the emptiness, I want to name what's actually going on. Because the way most people try to fix it makes it worse. Here's the trap. When you feel purposeless, you go looking for the answer outside yourself. A new career, a new relationship, a new city, a new achievement. And every time, it works for about a month. Then the emptiness comes back. Because you were looking in the wrong direction the whole time. Let me tell you how the wrong direction gets set. It happens in a stage I call substitution. And it's the most deceptive thing that can happen to a person. Here's how it works. Early on, you're handed a definition of what matters, what a good life looks like, what you should want. And at first, you know it's not fully yours. But you pursue it anyway because it earns approval. And here's the trap. If you pursue a borrowed definition long enough, you begin to genuinely want it. You lose access to the original signal, your own authentic desire, and the substitute feels, for years, like the real thing. That's David. He didn't feel like he was living a lie. He felt like a successful man with a vague, inexplicable emptiness. Because the borrowed life had become so convincingly his own that he couldn't see it was borrowed. That's why no achievement fixes this. You're feeding a hunger with food that was never yours. Let me name it precisely. The drifting. The feeling like a fraud even when you're doing well. The inability to commit because you don't trust your own knowing. And that hollow, is this all there is? That no promotion, no purchase, no milestone ever quiets for long. Here's the reframe. And it's the whole thing. Purpose is not something you find out there. It's something you recognize when you're finally connected to yourself. The reason no achievement resolves the emptiness is that the emptiness isn't an achievement problem. It's a disconnection problem. You've been so far from your own center for so long that you don't know what you actually want. So you keep borrowing other people's answers and wondering why they don't fit. There's a moment before the noise, before the borrowed answers, before everyone else's definition of what matters runs in your head where you're present and clearly yourself. I call it first cause, the moment before. And in that moment, you have access to something you've been starved of, your own knowing. Not what you're supposed to want, what you actually know. For David, that knowing arrived within 10 days of getting quiet. He had always wanted to teach children, not business, children. The age he was when, as he put it, he stopped being allowed to be curious. He described it not as grief, but as recognition. Like meeting someone he'd been told didn't exist, who'd been waiting patiently the whole time. This isn't about finding your passion in some grand revelation. It's quieter than that, and more reliable. It's the return to yourself, on demand, so your decisions start coming from genuine knowing, instead of from pressure and noise and other people's scripts. Here's what it looks like. The first 2 weeks, you make one decision that comes from a cleaner place than usual. Not a huge one, but you can feel it came from you, not from what you thought you should do. That feeling is the compass coming back online. By 30 days, you can name 3 moments where you acted from your own knowing instead of a borrowed answer, and you can see it in data across 5 dimensions of your inner life, based on research. By 90 days, you're making decisions from genuine knowing. That 6-month decision you've been delaying because underneath you already know the answer and you've been explaining it away, you can finally face it. Because you can finally hear yourself. The drifting settles. Not because you found the perfect purpose, because you stopped living someone else's answer. Here's the truth. The "is this all there is?" question doesn't get answered by more. It gets answered by return. When you're connected to yourself, the question quiets on its own because you're finally home. Every return is a rep. The reps compound into a clear, reliable connection to your own knowing. And from that place, purpose isn't something you chase. It's something you recognize. You were never lost. You were just disconnected from the only place the answer ever lived. Let me speak to the fear underneath the drifting, because it's usually the same one. The fear that if you actually got quiet enough to hear yourself, what you'd find is nothing. That the emptiness isn't covering a real self. It just goes all the way down. That maybe you don't have an authentic knowing. Maybe there's no you under there to find. I've sat with a lot of people carrying that specific fear, and I have never once found it to be true. Not once. There is always someone there. The signal is always still broadcasting, just underneath the noise, underneath the borrowed answers, underneath years of not being listened to. For David, it was a whole vocation waiting patiently, the teacher he'd never been allowed to be. He was certain there was nothing under the emptiness, and within 10 days of listening, there was a person there who knew exactly what he wanted. The emptiness was never evidence that you're empty. It's evidence that you've been disconnected from a self that's very much still there and has been waiting the whole time for you to get quiet enough to hear it. You are not the exception. There's someone in there, and they've been waiting for you. Find out where you stand. Take the free assessment at consciousnesstrack.app/quiz. 5 minutes, completely free. It maps exactly where you are across 5 dimensions of your inner life. I'm Candace. I'll see you in the next one.